Chapter 1. The Last Request, Okinawa, June 18th, 1945. The cave smelled of death and cordite. Private First Class. Robert Bobby Chen crouched at the entrance, rifle ready, listening to the wounded Japanese soldier inside struggle for breath. The enemy soldier had been shot twice, chest and abdomen, during the firefight 3 hours ago. He wasn't going to make it. Maybe 30 minutes left, an hour if he was unlucky. Chen's squad had cleared the cave system, found this one holdout, and called for a medic. But Doc Williams took one look and shook his head. Nothing I can do. He's gut shot, lung shot. Just make him comfortable and wait. So Chen waited. Guard duty for a dying enemy. Not the worst job he'd had on Okinawa, but not pleasant either. The soldier kept trying to speak, Japanese that Chen couldn't understand, gasping between words, clearly in agony but trying to communicate something urgent. "I don't speak Japanese, buddy," Chen said, knowing the man probably couldn't understand English either. "Sorry, just try to rest, okay?" The soldier coughed blood, then surprised Chen by speaking in broken English. "Please, my uniform." Chen leaned closer. "Your uniform? What about it?" "It is. Not proper, not folded, not—" He struggled for words. "Not correct for death. Please. I must. Fold it correctly. Before I die. Is important. Very important." Chen looked at the soldier's uniform. It was torn, bloody, filthy from weeks in the caves. The jacket was half off from where the medic had checked his wounds. Nothing about it was proper or correct. "You want to fold your uniform? Now?" The soldier nodded weakly. Samurai tradition. Before death, warrior must have uniform correct, folded properly. Honor to ancestors. Honor to emperor. Please. I know I am your enemy. I know you have no reason to help. But please, let me die with honor. Let me fold uniform correctly. Chen stared at this dying enemy soldier. Couldn't be more than 22, 23 years old, asking for something that made no tactical sense, served no military purpose, but clearly meant everything to him. "Sarge," Chen called to Sergeant Mike Torres, who was checking the rest of the cave system. "Got a situation here." Torres came over, looked at the dying Japanese soldier, raised an eyebrow. "What's the problem?" "He wants to fold his uniform. Says it's some samurai tradition. Needs it proper before he dies." Torres looked at Chen like he was crazy. "He wants to what?" "Fold his uniform. Fix it. Make it right. He's dying, Sarge. It's his last request." Torres studied the soldier, who was watching them with desperate eyes, clearly understanding enough English to know his fate depended on these two Americans. "Please," the soldier said again. "I am Lieutenant Takeshi Nakamura, Imperial Japanese Army. I have fought with honor. I wish to die with honor. Uniform must be correct. Is tradition. Is necessary for my soul. Please." Torres sighed heavily. They'd been fighting Japanese soldiers for 3 months on this cursed island. Had seen them fight to the death, refuse surrender, choose suicide over capture. Had watched civilians jump from cliffs rather than face American occupation. Honor and death were so intertwined in Japanese culture that they'd become inseparable. And now this dying enemy, this Lieutenant Nakamura, was asking for one last moment of dignity. One last chance to die according to his beliefs, his traditions, his code. "How long does he have?" Torres asked. Doc said maybe 30 minutes. Hour tops. And he wants to spend that time folding his goddamn uniform? Yeah, that's what he wants. Torres looked at Chen. "You're Chinese American, right? You know anything about this samurai honor stuff?" Chen shook his head. "Chinese American from San Francisco. My parents left China before I was born. I don't know much about Japanese traditions, but I know honor matters to them. A lot. More than life sometimes." Torres was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing regulations against humanity. Then he made a decision that would haunt and define both him and Chen for the rest of their lives. "All right, help him fold his uniform. But Chen, you stay with him. Don't take your eyes off him. He tries anything, you shoot." "Understood." Yes, Sergeant. And Chen? This stays between us. Command hears we let an enemy soldier have a ceremonial moment before dying. They'll think we've lost our minds. Torres left. Chen turned back to Nakamura, who was looking at him with profound gratitude despite his pain. Okay, Lieutenant, let's fold your uniform. What happened in the next 27 minutes would change both their lives in ways neither could predict. Chapter 2. The lieutenant from Kyoto, Chen, helped Nakamura sit up, moving slowly to avoid causing more pain. The soldier gasped, but didn't cry out, clearly trained to endure suffering in silence. Tell me what to do, Chen said. How does this work? Nakamura's hands were shaking, blood loss, shock, pain, but his voice was steady as he explained. Uniform must be aligned, collar straight, buttons proper, jacket folded with respect, like preparing for inspection, but more, like preparing for ancestors. As Chen helped arrange the torn, bloody jacket, Nakamura spoke between gasps. I am from Kyoto, beautiful city, old temples, cherry blossoms, my family, very traditional, samurai lineage going back 300 years. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all warriors, all died in battle, all died with honor. So you had to be a soldier, Chen said, understanding. Yes, no choice, but also pride, honor, duty. He coughed blood. I did not want war with America. But when war came, I must fight. Must uphold family honor, must be worthy of ancestors. Chen carefully straightened the collar, trying to work around the bullet wounds. What did you do before the war? I was teacher, high school, history. I teach students about Meiji Restoration, about opening of Japan to West, about, he smiled weakly, about how nations must understand each other to avoid war. Then I become part of war I tried to teach against. Irony, yes? Yeah, irony. Chen thought about his own path to this cave. I was a student, Berkeley, studying engineering. Then Pearl Harbor happened. Then my family got sent to internment camp because we were Asian, even though we were American citizens, even though my dad fought in World War I. Nakamura looked at him with sudden interest. You are prisoner in your own country? Was Manzanar, desert camp in California. They locked up all the Japanese Americans, and Chinese Americans got caught in the roundup sometimes because guards couldn't tell the difference. Chen laughed bitterly. So I volunteered. Figured fighting for America would prove my loyalty, prove I was American, not enemy. And now you fight Japanese soldiers, while Japanese Americans sit in camps. This is, Nakamura struggled for the word, complicated. Yeah, complicated. Chen finished with the collar, moved to the buttons. 3 were missing, torn off by bullets or medic, but he fastened the remaining ones carefully. You have family? Nakamura asked. Wife? Children? Got a girl back home, Linda, Chinese American, 2nd generation like me. We were going to get married, but then the war. She's still in the camp, Manzanar. Writes me letters about the dust storms and the barbed wire and the guard towers, about how America treats its own citizens like enemies. Chen's voice was tight. Makes me wonder sometimes what I'm fighting for. You fight for the America you want it to be, Nakamura said quietly. Not the America it is now. You fight so after war, maybe it changes. Maybe it becomes better. Chen looked at this dying enemy soldier who somehow understood his internal conflict better than most Americans. What about you? You got family? Nakamura's eyes filled with tears. Wife, Michiko. We marry 1942. I leave for war, 1943. I have not seen her in 2 years, and, his voice cracked, she is pregnant when I leave. I have child somewhere. Son or daughter, I do not know. 2 years old now. I never meet them, never hold them, never. He couldn't continue, overwhelmed by emotion and pain. Chen felt his own eyes burning. I'm sorry, Chen said quietly. I'm really sorry. My child will grow up without father. Will be told father died in war. Will wonder what kind of man father was. That is why. He gestured weakly at his uniform. That is why this matters. This uniform, folded correctly, returned to family. It tells them I died as samurai, that I maintained honor, that they can be proud, not ashamed. Chen understood then. This wasn't just about tradition or ritual. This was about leaving something behind for the child who'd never meet him. Proof that their father had been a man of honor. Your kid's going to be proud of you, Chen said. Uniform or no uniform. Because you're trying to do the right thing even while you're dying. That takes real courage. Thank you. That means much. They worked in silence for a few moments, Chen carefully arranging the blood-stained fabric, Nakamura directing with weakening voice. Chapter 3. The private from California. Why you help me? Nakamura asked suddenly. You are American soldier. I am enemy. You have orders to guard me, not assist with ceremony. Why? Chen paused, considering the question. Why was he helping? Orders said guard the prisoner. Regulations said minimize interaction. 3 months of brutal combat said hate the enemy. But looking at Nakamura, dying young man, father who'd never meet his child, teacher forced to become warrior, Chen couldn't see an enemy, just saw someone like him, someone caught in forces beyond control, someone trying to die with dignity. My grandmother, Chen said finally, back in China before she came to America. She taught me. How you treat someone in their final moments defines you more than how you treat them in their strong moments. She meant be kind to dying people, because that's when they need kindness most. He continued working on the uniform. Plus, I figure, war makes us into killers, makes us into people who shoot enemies without thinking about their families, their lives, who they were before they put on a uniform. If I can give you this one moment of dignity before you die, maybe I keep a piece of my humanity. Maybe I don't become just a killing machine. Nakamura smiled despite his pain. Your grandmother is wise. I wish I could meet her. Tell her she raised good grandson. She died in the camp, Manzanar, last year. Heart attack. Chen's voice was flat. They sent her body back to San Francisco for burial. Didn't even let my parents attend the funeral. Said it was security risk. I am sorry. Very sorry. Nakamura reached out with a shaking hand, placed it on Chen's arm. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Of this, of showing mercy to enemy. They sat in silence, 2 young men from different nations, different cultures, different sides of a war neither wanted, united only by this moment, this cave, this dying request. The jacket is ready, Chen said finally. What's next? Now, we fold, properly, with respect. I will guide you. You will do the folding, my hands. He looked at his trembling, blood-covered hands. My hands cannot do this anymore, but together, we can complete ceremony. And so, in a cave on Okinawa, an American soldier and a dying Japanese lieutenant folded a uniform together, carefully, precisely, with the respect due to 300 years of samurai tradition. It took 17 minutes. When they finished, Nakamura looked at the folded uniform with satisfaction. Perfect. You have helped me achieve what I could not achieve alone. Thank you, Private Chen. You have given me honor in death. You have given my family something to be proud of. You have. He coughed violently. You have shown that Americans are not demons, that even enemies can be compassionate. You're welcome, Lieutenant. And hey, you showed me that Japanese soldiers are humans too. That under all the propaganda and hate, we're all just people. Nakamura smiled. Yes, just people. Trying to survive war, we did not start. Trying to die with dignity, we did not lose. His breathing was getting more labored. I die soon, but I die correct. I die as samurai. I die with uniform proper. You made this possible. Is there anything else? Anything else you need? One thing, will you? Will you take uniform after I die? Send it to my family. Address is in jacket pocket. Letter for Michiko. Please, so they know, so they have something. Chen swallowed hard. Yeah, I'll make sure it gets to them. I promise. Thank you. Now I can. Nakamura's eyes were closing. Now I can go to ancestors with honor. Can face my father, my grandfather. Can tell them I died as warrior, as samurai, as man worthy of family name. Chen stayed with him as his breathing slowed, stayed as the light faded from his eyes, stayed until Lieutenant Takeshi Nakamura died, sitting upright, uniform folded perfectly beside him, expression peaceful despite the blood and pain. When it was over, Chen carefully retrieved the uniform, found the address in the pocket along with a letter written in Japanese, made a promise to a dead enemy that he'd spend the next 40 years keeping. Chapter 4. Torres' Discovery. Sergeant Torres found Chen sitting outside the cave, holding the folded uniform, face wet with tears. He dead? Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. Torres looked at the uniform in Chen's hands. What are you doing with that? He asked me to send it to his family, in Kyoto. There's an address, a letter. He wanted them to have it, proof he died with honor. Chen, you can't. I'm going to do it, Sarge. I made a promise. Listen to me. That's enemy material. You can't just mail a Japanese officer's uniform to Japan. There are regulations, procedures. Intelligence might want to examine it. And besides, even if you wanted to send it, how? Mail to Japan is shut down. War's still on. War won't last forever. When it's over, I'll find a way. Torres sat down next to him. What happened in there, Chen? You were supposed to guard him, not bond with him. He was a teacher, from Kyoto, had a wife and a kid he never met, came from a samurai family, didn't want the war but fought because it was his duty. Chen looked at Torres. Sound like anyone we know? That doesn't make him less of an enemy. Doesn't make him less of a human either. Chen held up the uniform. He spent his last 30 minutes making sure this was folded right, because that's what mattered to him. Dying with honor, leaving something his kid could be proud of. Can you imagine caring that much about tradition, about honor, that even while you're bleeding out, you're worried about your uniform being folded correctly? Torres was quiet for a long moment. What did you tell him? About sending the uniform? I promised I'd get it to his family. Somehow. Someday. Chen, that's a promise you might not be able to keep. Then I'll die trying. Because that's what honor means, right? Keeping your word even when it's hard. He showed me that. This guy, this enemy, he taught me more about honor in 30 minutes than 3 months of combat taught me about hate. Torres studied Chen's face, saw the determination there. You really going to do this? Really going to spend God knows how long trying to send an enemy's uniform to his family? Yeah, I am. Why? What do you owe him? I owe him the truth, that not all Americans hated him, that one American sat with him, helped him die with dignity, respected his traditions. Chen's voice was firm, and I owe it to myself, to prove that I'm more than just a killer, that I can show mercy even to enemies, that my grandmother's teachings matter even in war. Torres sighed. You're going to get yourself in trouble, but I respect it. That takes guts. He stood up. Keep the uniform. I'll file the report as personal effects secured from deceased enemy officer. Nobody needs to know more than that. But Chen, you try to mail this while the war's on. You'll get court-martialed. Wait. Be patient. The war is ending soon. Everyone can feel it. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me. Just don't make me regret covering for you. Chapter 5. The letter. That night, Chen used his flashlight to examine the letter Nakamura had left. It was in Japanese, beautiful calligraphy despite being written in a cave. He couldn't read it, but he could see the care that had gone into every character. He found another soldier in his unit, Private Tanaka, Japanese-American from Hawaii, who'd been recruited for language skills. Chen explained the situation carefully, swore Tanaka to secrecy. You want me to translate a dead enemy's letter? Tanaka looked skeptical. Yeah, I need to know what it says, need to know what I'm carrying. Tanaka took the letter, read it slowly, eyes widening. When he finished, he looked at Chen with new respect. This is This is beautiful, man. Heavy, but beautiful. He translated aloud. My beloved Michiko, if you are reading this, I have died in battle. I write this knowing I may not survive the coming days. The Americans are close. Our situation is desperate. I want you to know I thought of you every day, of your smile, your laugh, the way you hummed while making tea. I thought of the child I left growing in your belly. Our child, our future. I prayed every night that you both survived, that Japan would make peace, that this war would end before destroying everything beautiful in our world. I do not know if I died as a coward or as a warrior. I do not know if my death had meaning or was pointless waste. But I know I tried. I tried to maintain honor. I tried to be worthy of you, of our child, of our ancestors. If an American soldier gives you this letter with my uniform, know that he showed me mercy in my final moments. Know that not all enemies are demons. Know that even in war, there is humanity. Tell our child about me. Not just that I died in war, but that I loved teaching, loved history, loved cherry blossoms and old temples and quiet mornings with tea. Tell them I wanted peace but fought when duty called. Tell them I died thinking of them. Be strong, my Michiko. Raise our child in a Japan that learns from this war. Teach them that honor isn't about dying. It's about how you live. Teach them that former enemies can become friends if we choose understanding over hate. I love you. I will wait for you among the ancestors. Takeshi. The cave was silent except for the distant sound of artillery. Both soldiers had tears streaming down their faces. Jesus, Chen whispered. That's a father saying goodbye to a kid he never met. Yeah. Tanaka wiped his eyes. You really going to get this to his family? I have to. I promised. Then you'll need help. When the war ends, when mail opens up, when travel to Japan is possible, you'll need someone who speaks Japanese. I'll help you. We'll get this to his widow together. Chen looked at Tanaka with gratitude. Thank you. Nah, man, thank you. For seeing him as human. For keeping your promise. For showing that we're better than this war tried to make us. Tanaka carefully folded the letter, handed it back. Keep this safe. Keep the uniform safe. That's Lieutenant Nakamura's legacy. That's proof that even in hell people can choose compassion. Chapter 6. The war ends. August 15th, 1945. Japan surrendered. The war was over. Chen survived. Torres survived. Tanaka survived. They returned to California in October, processed out of the service in November, tried to return to normal life. But Chen couldn't forget the uniform. Couldn't forget the promise. Couldn't forget Nakamura's face as they folded that jacket together. He kept the uniform in a box under his bed. Took it out sometimes, looked at the careful folds, thought about the man who'd cared so much about dying correctly that he'd spent his last moments arranging fabric. In 1946, when mail service to Japan resumed, Chen tried to send the uniform. The post office refused. Enemy military items couldn't be mailed. He tried through military channels. They said they couldn't assist with personal matters for deceased enemy combatants. He tried the Red Cross. They were overwhelmed with actual emergencies. He hit walls everywhere. Maybe you need to let this go, Linda said. They'd married in January 1946, started building a life in San Francisco. Maybe the promise was impossible from the start. I can't let it go. I looked that man in the eyes and promised. That means something. It means you're a good person. But Bobby, it's been a year. You've tried everything. Maybe it's time to accept that some promises can't be kept. But Chen couldn't accept it. The uniform haunted him. Nakamura's face haunted him. The letter haunted him. In 1947, he heard about veteran exchange programs, Americans visiting Japan as part of occupation and reconstruction. He applied, got rejected, tried again in 1948, rejected again. You're Chinese American, they told him. We need white Americans for diplomatic visits. Better optics. The racism that had put him in internment camps was now preventing him from keeping his promise. The irony was bitter. He kept trying. Every year, 1949, 1950, 1951. In 1952, 7 years after Nakamura died, Chen finally got approved for a cultural exchange program. He'd be teaching English in Tokyo for 6 months. It was his chance. He packed the uniform carefully, brought Tanaka's translation of the letter, brought his own written account of those 27 minutes in the cave. He was going to keep his promise. Chapter 7. Finding Michiko. Kyoto in 1952 was a city of contrasts. Ancient temples stood next to modern American-style buildings. Traditional kimonos walked past women in Western dresses. Old Japan meeting New Japan, trying to figure out how to exist together. Chen stood outside the address from Nakamura's letter, heart pounding. 7 years. He'd carried this promise for 7 years. And now, finally, he might be able to deliver. He knocked. A woman answered, mid-30s, wearing traditional dress, face showing the lines of someone who'd survived hard years. Behind her, a child, maybe 8 years old, playing with toys. Yes? She asked in Japanese. Chen bowed. He'd learned proper etiquette for this moment. Mrs. Michiko Nakamura, my name is Robert Chen. I was with your husband when he died, on Okinawa, June 1945. Her hand went to her mouth. The child looked up, curious. You were with Takeshi, when he… Yes, I have something for you, from him. May I come in? She led him inside, hands shaking, called the child over. This is Akira, our son. He was born 3 months after Takeshi left for war. He never met his father. Chen looked at the 8-year-old boy, the child Nakamura had never met, had thought about in his final moments, had written that letter for. I've carried this for 7 years, Chen said, pulling out the carefully wrapped uniform. Your husband asked me to bring it to you. It was important to him. He spent his last moments making sure it was folded correctly. He unwrapped it slowly. Michiko gasped when she saw it. The jacket, still perfectly folded despite 7 years, still showing the care and precision of those final minutes. He folded this while dying. We folded it together. He directed me. He said it was samurai tradition, that he needed to die with his uniform correct, that it would prove to you and Akira that he died with honor. Tears streamed down Michiko's face. He thought of that, even while bleeding, even while dying. He thought of honor, of tradition, of us. Chen handed her the letter. He wrote this for you. I had it translated so I'd know what I was carrying. I can leave so you can read it privately. No. Please stay. I want you to tell me about his final moments. I have waited 7 years to know. Please. And so Chen told her everything. About the cave, about the wounds, about Nakamura's request to fold his uniform, about their conversation, the teacher from Kyoto and the student from Berkeley, enemy soldiers finding common ground, about the careful ceremony of folding, the respect shown, the humanity preserved, about Nakamura's last words, that he was grateful an American had helped him die with honor. Michiko listened without speaking, tears falling silently. When Chen finished, she bowed deeply, the formal bow of profound gratitude. You gave him peace, you gave him honor, you gave him dignity in his final moments, and you gave me this. She touched the uniform, proof that my husband was a good man, that he maintained his values even in death, that our son can be proud of his father. She turned to Akira, who had been listening with wide eyes. Your father was a samurai, not because he killed, but because he maintained honor when facing death. This American soldier helped him. Remember this. Remember that former enemies can be friends, that mercy matters more than victory. Chen stayed in Kyoto for 3 days, met Nakamura's parents, elderly but still proud, met his siblings, shared the story over and over. Each time, the gratitude was overwhelming. On his last day, Michiko gave him something in return, a small wooden carving, cherry blossom. Takeshi carved this before he left for war. He said cherry blossoms represent life, beautiful but brief. Take this. Remember that his life was brief but beautiful. And remember that you made his death beautiful too. Chapter 8. The Correspondence. For the next 30 years, Chen and Michiko exchanged letters. She told him about Akira growing up, becoming a teacher like his father, getting married, having children. Chen told her about his life, his engineering career, his children, his work with Chinese-American civil rights. In one letter, Michiko wrote, Akira asked me yesterday what kind of man his father was. I showed him the uniform, told him about the American soldier who helped fold it, told him that his father's last act was one of tradition and honor, and that his last gift was showing that enemies can be compassionate. Akira cried. Then he said, I want to meet Mr. Chen someday. I want to thank him for giving me my father's honor. In 1975, 30 years after Nakamura's death, Chen returned to Japan. This time with his whole family, Linda, their 3 children, even his elderly father, who'd survived Manzanar. Akira met them at the airport, now 43. A history professor at Kyoto University, married with 2 teenage children of his own. He bowed formally, then surprised everyone by hugging Chen. Thank you, Akira said in perfect English. Thank you for my father. Thank you for his honor. Thank you for keeping your promise. They visited Nakamura's grave. The uniform was displayed in a glass case at the family shrine, still perfectly folded, still showing the care of those final moments. A plaque explained its significance. Folded with honor by Lieutenant Takeshi Nakamura and American Private Robert Chen, June 18, 1945, proof that dignity survives even war. My whole life, Akira said, standing before the shrine, I have had this proof that my father was a good man, that he died with honor, because you kept your promise, because you saw him as human. He turned to Chen's children, American teenagers who'd grown up hearing the story. Your father is a great man, not because he fought in war, because he showed mercy in war, because he kept promise for 30 years, because he proved that enemies are only enemies until we choose to see them as humans. That night, over dinner with both families, Nakamura's and Chen's, Japanese and American, former enemies now friends, Michiko stood to speak. 30 years ago, my husband died on Okinawa. I thought I had lost everything. My husband, my son's father, my future. But Mr. Chen gave me something more precious than my husband's life. He gave me proof of my husband's honor. He gave me a story I could tell my son. He gave me the knowledge that even in war's darkest moments, humans can choose compassion. She raised her glass. To Takeshi, to Robert, to the uniform that brought our families together, to the proof that mercy creates bridges between nations. Everyone drank. Chen felt tears streaming down his face. 30 years of carrying that promise. 30 years of wondering if it mattered. 30 years of hoping he'd done the right thing. And here was the answer. It mattered. It mattered more than he'd ever imagined. Chapter 9. The Next Generation. In 1985, Akira's daughter, Yuki, 22 years old, came to study at UC Berkeley, the same university where Chen had studied before the war, before Manzanar, before Okinawa, before everything. She stayed with the Chen family, called Robert Uncle Robert, learned about her grandfather from the man who'd been with him in his final moments. Tell me everything, she said. I grew up with the uniform, with the story, but I want to hear it from you. Every detail. So Chen told her about the cave, about the request, about the folding ceremony, about the conversation, 2 young men finding common ground in hell, about her grandfather's last words, his last thoughts, his last concerns. He was worried about honor, Chen said. About your grandmother, about your father who he'd never meet, about leaving something behind that proved he'd been a good man. And you gave him that. You helped him die with dignity. We gave each other that. He taught me something too, that enemies are just people on the wrong side of a border, that showing mercy doesn't make you weak, that keeping promises matters more than following orders. Yuki was quiet for a moment. You know what my father tells students? When he teaches about World War II, he tells them about the uniform, about the American soldier who broke regulations to help an enemy die with honor. He says, "This is what separates civilization from barbarism. Not whether you kill in war. War makes killers of us all. But whether you preserve dignity even in death. Whether you see enemies as humans." Chen felt something break open in his chest. 40 years of carrying that moment, wondering if it had meaning, wondering if anyone cared. And here was proof. It had become a teaching tool, a lesson passed down through generations. "Your grandfather was a good man," Chen said. "And you know how I know? Because in his final moments, when he could have been bitter, angry, hateful, he chose tradition, chose honor, chose to believe that life had meaning beyond just survival. That's the mark of a good man, what he cares about when everything else is gone." Chapter 10. The Museum. In 2005, 60 years after Nakamura's death, the Nakamura family donated the uniform to the Kyoto Peace Memorial Museum. It became the centerpiece of an exhibit, "Dignity in Death: How Mercy Bridges Nations." Chen, now 92 years old, frail but clear-minded, attended the opening ceremony. So did Akira, 73, still teaching. So did Yuki, 42, now a professor of international relations. So did Chen's children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. 2 families, 3 generations, united by a promise kept 60 years ago. The uniform was displayed in a spotlit case. Around it, photographs, young Nakamura in his teaching days, young Chen in his army uniform, Michiko holding baby Akira, the meeting in 1952, the gathering in 1975, decades of correspondence. The placard read, "On June 18, 1945, in a cave on Okinawa, a dying Japanese lieutenant made a final request: to fold his uniform correctly before death. Private Robert Chen, U.S. Army, chose mercy over regulation. He spent 27 minutes helping his enemy die with honor. That choice rippled forward for 60 years, created a friendship between families, created a teaching moment for thousands of students, created proof that enemies are only enemies until we choose to see them as humans. This uniform represents the best of humanity in war's worst moments. It proves that dignity survives even when everything else is destroyed. It shows that small acts of compassion create generations of peace. Lieutenant Nakamura died with honor because Private Chen gave him respect. And both men taught us that mercy matters more than victory, that humanity matters more than hatred, that the enemy is only enemy until he's someone's father, someone's husband, someone's child. This is the power of choosing compassion in impossible circumstances. This is what happens when soldiers remember their humanity. This is why the uniform still matters, not because of the battle it was worn in, but because of the mercy shown when it was folded. At the ceremony, Akira spoke. "I never met my father. He died 3 months before I was born. Everything I know about him, I learned from my mother's stories, from his letters, from the way our family spoke of him. But the most important thing I learned came from Mr. Chen, that my father died maintaining his values, that even in his final moments, tradition mattered, honor mattered, dignity mattered. That uniform taught me what kind of man my father was. And Mr. Chen taught me what kind of men both sides could be, that Americans weren't demons, that Japanese weren't fanatics, that we were all just humans trying to survive while preserving whatever pieces of our souls we could carry through hell. I have spent 50 years teaching history, and the most important lesson I teach is this: the enemy is only your enemy until you know his name, until you know his story, until you see him as someone's father, someone's son, someone's future. Mr. Chen saw my father as human, and my father saw Mr. Chen as human. And from that recognition, 60 years of friendship were born. That's what this uniform represents. Not war, not death, not enmity, but the moment when 2 enemies chose to be human together. And that moment changed everything. Chen couldn't speak, emotion too overwhelming. But he stood, walked slowly to the uniform case, placed his hand on the glass. 60 years ago, he'd helped fold that jacket. 60 years ago, he'd made a promise. 60 years ago, He'd chosen mercy, and that choice had mattered. God, it had mattered more than he'd ever dreamed. Epilogue. The folding ceremony. Robert Chen died in 2010 at age 97. At his funeral in San Francisco, the Nakamura family, 3 generations of them, traveled from Japan to attend. They brought something with them, a replica of the uniform, folded exactly as the original had been folded 65 years ago in that cave. Akira stood before the assembled mourners, Americans and Japanese, veterans and families, students and teachers, and explained, "When my father died, Mr. Chen helped him fold his uniform. That act of mercy gave my father dignity in death and gave our family honor in grief. Today, to honor Mr. Chen, we perform the same ceremony. We fold a uniform. We remember that dignity matters. We remember that mercy creates peace. We remember that former enemies can become family." He demonstrated the folding ceremony, the careful precision, the respect shown to each fold, the tradition that had mattered so much to his father. Chen's grandchildren helped, learning the ritual that had connected their families. When they finished, Akira placed the folded uniform on Chen's casket. "You kept your promise, Mr. Chen. For 65 years you carried my father's honor. You proved that compassion survives even war. You taught 3 generations of our families that mercy matters more than victory. Rest now. Your promise is kept. Your legacy lives on. Your lesson endures." He bowed deeply, the formal bow of profound gratitude and respect. Then, surprising everyone, he saluted. An old Japanese man saluting an old American soldier, showing respect across decades and cultures and former enmity. Chen's daughter stood to speak, reading from her father's journal, found after his death. June 18, 1945. Helped a dying Japanese lieutenant fold his uniform today. Took 27 minutes. Might have been the most important 27 minutes of my life. He taught me that the enemy is only your enemy until you see him as human. That honor transcends nationality. That dignity matters even when everything else is gone. I promised him I'd get that uniform to his family. Spent 7 years figuring out how. Another 60 years watching the ripples spread. Worth every minute. If anyone reads this after I'm gone, keep your promises, especially the hard ones. Especially the ones nobody else understands. Especially the ones that take decades to fulfill. Because those are the promises that matter most. Those are the promises that change the world. The service ended with both families planting a cherry tree in San Francisco's Japanese tea garden. A plaque beneath it reads, "In memory of Lieutenant Takeshi Nakamura, 1917-1945, and Private Robert Chen, 1913 to 2010. Enemy soldiers who chose humanity. Their 27 minutes in a cave created 65 years of friendship. May their example remind us, dignity matters, mercy matters, promises matter. The enemy is only your enemy until you fold his uniform together. Every spring, cherry blossoms fall from that tree, brief but beautiful. Just like the moment when 2 enemies chose to be human together. Just like the mercy that rippled forward for 3 generations. Just like all the best moments in life. Fleeting but unforgettable. Small but infinitely significant. And sometimes, if you visit that tree on the anniversary of their meeting, you'll see an old Japanese professor and an old American veteran's family standing together, touching the bark, remembering the uniform that connected them, the promise that endured, the proof that even in war's darkest moments, humans can choose compassion over cruelty, mercy over hatred, understanding over enmity, all because one dying man asked to fold his uniform, and one American soldier said yes.